We are Marc, Amy, Juliette and Clement from the medieval Chateau de Rosieres. This Christmas we've made you a very special advent calendar. Every day from the 1st to the 25th of December we will open the door to a different room in the chateau and introduce you to its past, present and future. Merry Christmas.
Welcome to another day of our Chateau Advent Tour, and today we're taking you right to the top of the chateau to show you the attic. And we are freezing ourselves silly in the process of doing this.
Well, Amy is. It's actually not that cold.
It's very cold, even though he's still wearing shorts.
This attic is really interesting to understand how the chateau was built. Because we have records that in the 18th century it was 2 floors higher than it is now, and which means that the roof was all redone later on and lowered. What we can see actually in the carpentry is that some of the beams have been reused. A few of the king posts have some extra slots that are not used anymore, which means that they were used somewhere else.
What's a king post?
It's the vertical beams that hold the
gable, like the
top
roof.
rafter,
the gable, I think, yeah.
and the rafters. So basically it's all the vertical posts that hold everything.
Oh yeah.
What's interesting is that these king posts are made of sweet chestnut wood, which is very durable wood that doesn't get eaten by worms or anything, whereas the rest of the carpentry is made of pine, which is much softer and more tender. And it indicates that there have been, they have probably, when they lowered the roof, they didn't pull big trunks of trees back to the top, but instead they disassembled the existing one and reused the beams so they wouldn't have to do some extra lifting.
And it's quite interesting because we do have a lot of insect eating of the beams, don't we? But I mean, you can see that here. But we have dealt with that, haven't we?
It's the whole carpentry has been treated, and I don't think the insects have been active recently. The main problem we have here is that we're in the very windy area. And the tiles tend to blow and move, and so we always need to check that it doesn't rain inside the attic, because that's when we start to have big problems.
And the problem is, because we don't live on one of the floors, we've got the ground floor, the first floor, the second floor, and then the attic. I think it's different in the US, the way you number them.
Third floor.
First, second, third, fourth. Yeah, anyway, there's a few floors. And there's a floor in between us, our bedroom
where
floor, and the attic, which isn't used. So if we see flooding coming in, it's already pretty bad, because it means it's already gone through the attic and another floor and then come through. And that did happen. There's one particularly difficult area where there was one tiny tile that kept moving in the wind, and then because of the enormity of the roof of the chateau, it means that all the water would flood. It collects huge amounts of water and it'd flood down and all flow through that one tiny missing tile. And you can see here that there's the staining around, and it went through the insulation, through the floor, through the other floor, and down into another bedroom. But Marc has intrepidly gone out onto the roof and finally fixed that down now.
Yeah, I've put buckets underneath.
No, we seriously did have a lot. I think I did an Instagram story about one of them. It was before we were filming for YouTube, and I've got Clement strapped to my chest because I was at home alone with him and carrying buckets up and down from this floor to the ground floor to empty them throughout the storm because they were just filling up and filling up and filling up. It's also quite atmospheric up here in
No,
storm.
actually, you did a YouTube video, which was how to stormproof a chateau.
Oh yeah, I did do. Yeah, was that the same incident? There have been many
Yeah.
flooding incidents.
Well, basically, we have to be here after
Yeah.
every rain,
Yeah.
during every rain,
Yeah.
to check that there's not a new leak or anything.
Yeah, yeah.
This king post has an interesting stencil saying that it was done in 1880, and we actually know that this was the time of Octave de la Valette, who did some extensive groundwork in the house. He demolished some buildings. He apparently redid all the roofing, and this date is actually consistent with the age of the tiles. The tiles are flat mechanic tiles like we have here, and they were made locally in a factory in Saint-Vallier, which is just by the Rhône River. And this model doesn't exist anymore, but it was the very first industrialized tiles that were available in the area.
I'm learning something new here. He was also the person who redid the dining room and the big bedroom. We've already shown you the dining room, and the fancy bedroom is still to come.
Yeah, he did some, locally, some very big work, basically to try and make the chateau grander, rather than...
More of a display chateau than a defensive one, wasn't it?
Yeah, less medieval and more neo-Gothic.
One of the things I love about the attic is the huge chimneys coming up through it. It really gives you a sense of bringing the entire chateau together, and how just the smoke and the heat that used to be used to heat the entire place came up through here. And not all of these chimneys are still used, but some of them are, aren't they?
You're a poet.
I knew he was going to say that. He always says that when I start getting flowery. Less poetic are these hot water balloons that we've been putting in, which were quite something to get up here.
I find them quite poetic, actually. We've installed a very impressive water heating system, heating system, and that uses wood chips from our own land. And it produces heat for the heating of the house, but also for the tap water. And that works by pumping hot water into sub-balloons, and inside these sub-balloons is a coil that heats up the tap water. So we have water on demand. But the problem is that in a big chateau like this, if you want to have hot water at the tap without running water for 10 minutes...
For it to go all the way, ding, 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 ding.
To empty the whole pipe and waste hundreds of liters of water, you need to put these balloons a bit everywhere so that they are reasonably close to the bathrooms. So the way we did that was that we used an old chimney of the old oil burner that we're not using anymore, And we put some hot water pipes inside this chimney that bring the water directly from the heater, the boiler, and bring them in the attic into these sub balloons. And these balloons are located just above the future bathrooms we will have in the chateau, which means that they will only have to run the tap for a few seconds before we can get hot water.
We've actually got a video I've still to edit from about a year ago about that whole process. I'm a little bit behind. One of the interesting things up here in the attic is that almost a quarter of this top floor is sealed off with a wall here. I'm not going to explain to you exactly what that is now, because it's coming up in another video. In fact, there's a video we've already done about the room that this pertains to, but you just have to remember this because there's a huge partition up here that is to do with a very interesting development in the history of the chateau.
We have very few original artifacts from the chateau, but this is one of them. It's not very old, it's probably 19th century and dates from when the roof was redone. But it's an old water tower that was used to get water in the chateau. We know that the main source of water at the time was a spring up in the woods, and there was a pump. It came down by gravity all the way down to the roof of the house into these these water balloons, and then went down in the sinks, which means that they had running water in the 19th century.
Marc is showing you the top of the tower over there.
There is just a little gap behind this beam that's just enough to crawl on top of it. The ceiling is very low. So what I don't know is if there was a room, if the tower actually went higher than it does now, and there was a room here, or if this was just meant to be an access when they redid the roof.
The problem with filming in the winter is it gets dark quite quickly, and we're lacking light now to show you any more. But we just wanted to tell you a little bit about the future of this space. There's so much potential up here, but we aren't actually in need of any usable living space. So for the time being, this is just going to be insulated pretty heftily to keep the heat in the rest of the chateau. And Marc has a cunning plan for light.
Yes, indeed. We have a big staircase with only a few windows, which means that in winter, when it's dark, we have very, very little light and it can get a bit depressing. And my idea was to create a skylight from the roof, box in the part of the attic above the staircase, and create a light well under it, so that
like a light tunnel
that would provide light all the way down the stairs to the ground floor.
It's a really ambitious plan he's got there, but he assures me it will work.
I'm sure it will make a huge difference.
We'll soon see. Thank you ever so much for watching today, and please join us tomorrow for another room in our Chateau Advent calendar.